When I was younger, my grandmother used to say, "Every noise has a story. The louder it gets, the older the ghost." Back then, I thought it was just one of her strange superstitions, one of those old myths passed down in rural England, the kind they tell you to keep you from wandering around at night. But I understand her words now, because a few years ago, I lived inside that storied in 2017. My best friend Aaron and I found an old house listed absurdly cheap in Kent that it had stood since the late 1800s, a narrow, two-floor brick home with ivy twisting up the walls and a gabled roof that leaned slightly to one side. The ad said, "Some structural shifting," but we thought it was perfect for what we wanted. A small place to restore, maybe flip, maybe film in. The locals had nicknamed it the house that wouldn't sleep. We laughed when the agent told us that. "People say it's got restless walls," she said with a half smile. "Doors that open in their sleep." We should have taken her tone seriously. The first night, it was cold. Not the usual kind of cold. This was a kind that felt aware. Like the air itself watched you breathe. We were unpacking in the kitchen when something in the ceiling gave a low, dragging groan. Plaster dust drifted down. Aaron looked up and said, "Old house, would shifts at night." We laughed again. We laughed a lot that week, but by the second night, things began to move at exactly 2:13 a.m. I woke to a clatter, the sound of pots falling in the kitchen below that I thought Aaron was rummaging for food, but when I called his name, there was no reply. The noise stopped that I stepped into the hall. The house was silent except for the faint creak of its old wooden spine. Then, as I passed the guest room, I saw the door gently swinging. Not open, not shut, just moving rhythmically, as if breathing when I entered. The air was thick and cold. The curtains swayed slightly, though the window was sealed shut. Then I heard a whisper, faint, dry, almost like fabric brushing against fabric that I froze that it came again. Closer this time that a sound, not a voice exactly, but deliberate, something brushed past my leg. Cold, invisible, and fast. When I turned the light on, the old wooden chair in the corner had shifted 2 feet forward. Aaron didn't. "Believe me, of course," he said. "It's probably the floorboards. Draft pressure. You're just tired." But the next night, it wasn't just me at 3 a.m. There came a bang from the attic, 3 distinct hits, one after another, like fists slamming into wood. We both heard it, and it happened again. Always 3 times that we searched the attic with flashlights. Only boxes, old newspapers, a single child's wooden toy horse lying on its side. Aaron laughed nervously and said, "Classic poltergeist behavior, huh? They say if you mock it, it stops." So he mocked it. He stomped 3 times back. Nothing happened then. But that morning, all 3 of our kitchen chairs were stacked on top of each other on the counter. Perfectly balanced, we started researching. Apparently, the house had belonged to a family named Wren, who lived there in the 1890s. Their teenage daughter, Elsie, was said to be a nervous child with strange fits. When she turned 16, the neighbors claimed to hear constant banging, scratching, and the sound of furniture moving by itself. After her death, cause unknown, the house was abandoned for nearly 30 years. The locals said her spirit never left. Some believed it wasn't Elsie at all, that a poltergeist had attached to her. According to legend, poltergeists weren't ghosts but manifestations, echoes of emotion that grow strong enough to move things. They feed on turmoil, fear, anger, and attention. Aaron didn't buy it, he said. "So what, we just ignore it and it gets bored? Maybe that's what we should have done." But we didn't ignore it, we recorded it on the 4th night. Aaron set up his camera on a tripod in the living room, facing the staircase. We left a glass on the table and went upstairs to be at tea around 2:45 a.m. A thunderous crash jolted us awake. We ran downstairs. The glass was shattered on the floor. The table was flipped. The camera was still rolling. We watched the footage frame by frame first. There was nothing, just silence. Then the faint sound of breathing near the mic, soft, slow. Then a blur in the corner, like dust, but thicker, almost solid. The table trembled once, then flipped violently out of frame. There were no strings. No wind. In the very last second before the footage cut off, you could see the reflection in the window. A small, feminine shape standing behind the camera. Facing it, we didn't sleep after that. By the fifth night, the atmosphere in the house changed completely. It wasn't just noise anymore. It was intent. Every time we entered a room, something felt displaced. Chairs slightly turned. Doors that had been open now shut. Our tools moved from one shelf to another. Then the scratches began. 3 parallel lines gouged deep into the plaster of the stairwell wall, like fingernails dragged with impossible strength. We painted over them. By morning, they were back, and under the paint, faintly visible, someone had written 2 words, "Stay awake." Aaron started to lose it. He stopped eating, barely slept, muttered that the house was learning. He wanted to prove it wasn't supernatural, so he nailed all the doors shut. Every single one except the front. That night, the nails from the attic door fell out one by one. We both heard them hit the floor. Around midnight, I heard a knock. 3 times. The inside of the front door. Aaron was in bed. I saw his light off. When I called his name, he didn't move. The knocking came again, harder. I walked downstairs, every step groaning under my feet. When I reached the door, I noticed something strange. The doorknob was turning, slowly, as if someone was on the other side. I whispered, "Who's there?" A child's voice whispered back, "Elsie." Then silence. The knob stopped, but from the other side of the wood came a faint tap, 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 like small fingers tracing along the grain. When I looked through the peephole, there was no one, only darkness and fog. We should have left that night. But Aaron wanted one last recording. Proof that we weren't crazy. He placed salt circles in each room, claiming it would trap the energy. We sat together in the living room, flashlights off, camera rolling. The first sound came from upstairs, a dragging, like furniture being pulled across wood. Then footsteps, heavy, slow, descending the stairs one step at a time. We stared at the staircase. The flashlight flickered. Something pale appeared. Not fully seen, just movement, like fog condensing into a shape. It stopped halfway down the stairs, and then every door in the house slammed at once. Aaron screamed, "Stop it!" He ran toward the stairs, and before I could grab him, he was thrown backward, like something invisible had hit him full force. The air rippled. Every window cracked simultaneously. I don't remember running. I just remember being outside, gasping in the freezing air, watching the lights inside flicker like lightning. Aaron never came out. When the police arrived, the place was silent. No sign of anyone else. They found Aaron unconscious at the bottom of the stairs, a broken shoulder and deep scratches. On his arm, 3 long, even marks. They said the floor had collapsed, that the noises were structural failures. But the footage, that was never returned to us. They claimed it was damaged. The house was sealed off soon after. A year later, it burned down in a freak electrical fire. No wiring left inside. A historian who contacted me later said the Wren's daughter, Elsie, died in that house during a storm. They'd found her body at the bottom of the same staircase. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Her father had claimed she fell. But in his diary, one line stood out. "The house wakes when we sleep." That line keeps replaying in my head. Because last week, I moved to a new apartment. Top floor, modern, nowhere near Kent. But at exactly 2:13 a.m., while editing this story, the lights flickered. And from the wall behind me came 3 soft knocks. They say poltergeists are born from energy, from fear, from anger, from the living more than the dead. That they're not bound to houses but to stories, and that the moment someone listens, they find another home. So if you're still awake, and you hear a soft knock behind you while watching this, don't answer, because some myths don't die, they move.